Hello and welcome back to All for United, and this is your just another transfer show. Your place for the lowdown on all the major Manchester United transfer stories that are going around at the moment. And boy, there are going to be a few now that we've secured that crucial Champions League place this weekend against Leicester City. Today I'm joined by three guests from the All for United team. We've got James, we've got Kojo, who you'll be familiar with from the breakdown and banter shows, and we've got Hader. How you doing, guys? How you feeling?
All good, man. All good. Thanks.
Good.
Glad to have you
on. Glad to have you on today, guys. As usual, guys, we want you involved in the show as well. So subscribe to the channel, like the channel, write your comments in the comments boxes, get involved on our social media platforms. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you want to look. The descriptions for all those links will be in this YouTube video. Get your transfer stories in. If it's something that you want us to cover, get them in the comments and we'll talk about them on future shows. So here we go. United have secured this crucial Champions League place with that win against Leicester City, and the transfer window is now open. How much of a difference, we should start off by saying how much of a difference, I'll come to you first, James, do you think it makes that United are now have their place secured in the Champions League for next season? Do you think it makes a massive difference with their transfer dealings this summer?
I think it's definitely going to make a noticeable difference. I think there's a lot of players that we could have gone and signed where just the pulling power of the club would have been enough without Champions League. But yeah, without doubt, I think it's definitely going to be, with signing players like Sancho, I think it's going to be such a massive boost for the club. My only worry is that the owners see that we've done a decent job last season and they decide to sort of pull some spending, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I can only see it as a positive.
Yeah, it's an interesting point there that James makes. I'll come to you, Kojo. In terms of, can United afford to rest on their laurels now? As this squad proven since January, just with the addition of Bruno Fernandes, actually it probably doesn't need as much work as we may think, or have we got to be careful that we're just not being sort of led by this blind faith?
No, it's always going to need improvement. I think even when we were super successful, one thing we're good at is always improving the squad and adapting to every new scenario and every new era. So we've been on a great run since Bruno Fernandes joined, to be completely honest. But it'll be very important to keep improving the side. We can't rest over here, and we need to also have backup in quality so that if Bruno and Pogba or someone are still feeling exhausted after a while, we're not worried about who's going to play in their place. We have someone in there ready to take the mantle and continue to play our good football.
Yeah, no, thank you. And in terms of sort of a transfer budget potentially, Hader, do you think, obviously we know with Champions League comes extra money and things like that and different sponsorship deals, more money will be available. Do you expect now to see United probably spend more in this window as a result of getting in the Champions League? Or do you think that their budgets were already set way before, the Leicester game on Sunday?
I mean, not to be a downer, unfortunately, I think that we've seen in the past with the Glazers that when we have got into Champions League, we haven't spent the money. Now, I like to think that we've got that extra money to spend, but until I see it, history suggests that won't happen. I think we'll have a set budget, and it's quite clear from a lot of the reports that we are looking to shift the likes of Sanchez, Smalling, Lingard, and a few others, and that will free up some money and space on the wage bill. So I think we've got a set budget, but I wouldn't get too excited about the extra sort of 70 odd million, and with the Adidas money that's come in for getting into Champions League. Unfortunately, I think it's a case of we've got money for Sancho, and then any more signings we'd have to sell and then add that money to the budget.
Yeah, I said, I think I put a tweet out after the game on Sunday and just saying that, United had done fantastically well to get to, to be in the Champions League this season, next season, considering where they were, especially sort of back in October, but also at the turn of the year. And I think, Ollie's really strengthened his position now with the results on the pitch, and he's almost put the pressure back onto the club now on the board, and they have to deliver for him a similar performance equivalent in the transfer window to what he's delivered the second half of the season. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to talk about the sort of centre-back position, because that's sort of our main topic today. It's, the media continue to suggest that the centre-back position becoming more and more of a priority. We looked at, on the last show, we looked at people like Nathan Ake and Romagnoli at AC Milan, and Nathan Ake obviously at Bournemouth. But a name that's been coming up recently this last week is Gabriel Megalhaes, who is a young centre-back from Brazil. Now, Hayder, I know you know a little bit more about Megalhaes. He's currently playing at Lille. And I think all the indications a couple of days ago was that, he was all set to be part of a double deal involving his Lille teammate, Oshaben, to go to Napoli. But it's a deal that sort of seems to have hit a bit of a rock. And there has been talk that United may have come in at the last minute. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about Gabriel and what he's all about?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to establish is what sort of centre-back he is, because if you're looking at the qualities that we have in our current centre-back pairing, I think both are decent at bringing the ball out of defence and passing it. But I think the big issue for our defensive partnership is the fact that there's a lack of pace there. And when we're playing the high line, especially Maguire, we've seen a couple of times since the restart, he's been called out. But what Gabriel is he's a sort of centre-back that ticks all the boxes of a modern-day centre-back. So that's in terms of his passing ability, his aerial duels, his tackling, his concentration is really, really good. I think that what's really important as well is that he's versatile, so he can play in a back three. He's also played in defensive midfield. That's due to his brilliant passing range. And for me, I think what's really key when you look at the likes of Ake being linked to us and Romagnoli is that they're left-footed players. And apart from Marcos Rojo, who's clearly out the door and not good enough, we don't have a left-sided centre-back. I think both Lindelof and Maguire clearly are more comfortable playing on the right. So what's really brilliant, though, is that Gabriel has great composure. He doesn't go to ground easily. He's not diving into tackles when confronted by a skillful attacker. And this is shown by the fact he wins 70% of his ground duels, which is really, really impressive. And he plays a sort of like a deep line playmaker sort of role at Lille, heavily involved in the build-up play. He averages about 64 passes per 90 minutes with an 82% accuracy. And that's not just short passes. And this is really important to establish that. These are pinpoint passes between the lines, and 40% of these passes are forward passes.
Thank you. Well, you've clearly done your own work there, Hayder, so thank you for that. I mean, it's important. I mean, sometimes, as we've said before, we are linked with 1,000 names. And not every name will be... Sorry, carry on. Did you want to say something else, Hayder, or...? No, I think he's frozen. Right, we'll come back to that. Interesting. We had a chat the other day about, United sort of linked with left-sided centre-backs and the importance of whether we feel it's a sort of left-footed centre-back that they now bring in. James, for you, first of all, centre-back a priority, and also who would be someone that you would look to target in that position?
I think it's definitely important. I think Lindelof can be, on his day, incredible, but there's too many games where he's not quite at it. So yeah, I'd definitely say centre-back's the target, but the insistence on getting a left-footed centre-back sort of confuses me a little bit, because at the highest level that we're playing at, you'd think a lot of players at this level should be two-footed enough to be comfortable with either foot. Yeah. We've seen that with Maguire. He's quite comfortable with either foot. Yeah. So I think... did you ask me who I'd target personally?
Yeah, well? Have you got any other names that, are you seeing stories out there, anything, your own opinion, that you feel that would be the right move for United? Or?
Well, I feel personally the one that stands out for me is Upamecano from RB Leipzig. He's said in the media as well, he doesn't want to go to a Real Madrid or a Liverpool where he would be second fiddle. He wants to play games, and I feel if we brought him in, we'd be able to give him that game time. I think he's already got experience at the highest level. He's been good this year in the German league and the Champions League. He offers that pace to complement Maguire, and he's got the physicality and tackling to go with it. And I just think what the 50 million it's going to cost you. I think he's young, he's quality. I think it sort of acts as a no-brainer.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you state, names like Upamecano, we've touched on Ake, Kojo, coming to you. United are obviously the next step in progression now for United is definitely closing that gap between Man City and Liverpool and ultimately looking to be in a title challenge, if not next season, the season after. Are they realistically going to be able to do that with a young centre-back that, maybe a lot of people haven't heard of? How important do you think it is that they get somebody established in that position this season and don't just look at it as an area where they can bring a young player with potential in that could obviously progress? Because I feel like if our defence is not up to it next year, that can make or break our season like it does any team. I think we've seen, obviously, how City have dropped off this year when they've not quite had two centre-backs at it every game. So, should United be looking at a young centre-back who looks like he's got plenty of promise, great stats there that Hayden told us about, or do you think they should be looking for someone who's got experience and maybe been in a title running in another country or another league and can come straight into our team and bring that experience?
I think it's more important to find someone that fits the sort of football that Solskjaer wants the team to play. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, of course, as a defender, you need to be able to defend. If Upamecano's a great shout. I've been impressed by him every time I've seen him, so I wouldn't mind someone like him. But also Gabriel, I've seen very little of him, but the little I've seen, he hasn't given me anything to worry about when watching him. So they both fit quite comfortably. It's just it can go one of two ways. I mean, with an experienced one, because with an experienced player, we've seen it work before, we've seen it not work before in other places. Whereas with young, you're waiting for potential, and if they're going to fulfill the potential, it's also risky then as well. Personally, I'll probably go for a younger player. I think football is becoming a bit more of a younger player's game, especially now because pace is so important in terms of recovery runs. Teams press so high, so if you're looking to come back off the press, you need the quick centre back. So I think going for a younger player would probably be more important than going for someone that has the experience, because that doesn't always work out the way you want it to go. And as for closing the gap towards the top two, I think we're still a bit too far off that. But I don't think we're that far, but the point gap is so big. I just don't know if we're ready to close it down too much yet. Maybe give it another 2 seasons before I think we're there. But we'll see what happens.
Cool, thanks, Jojo. We've got you back, I think, Ada. So we'll just give you a final thought on this story. Now, looking at the story itself and the reports, do you think there's some substance to what people are saying here, or do you think this is just a deal that's getting held up because apparently it's going to be about £100 million deal that Napoli are doing with Lille? Do you think that it's held up because of that, or do you think that there may also be some last-minute interest, not just from United but other big clubs?
I think there's interest from United. When you look at the sources that they're coming from, they're not the most reputable. Until usually the way I look at it is if Buhavsti says something, or one of the top French journalists out there, then I'll believe it. So I honestly think if I had to rate it out of 5, I'd give it perhaps like a 2. I think he's on the list of our targets, but I'm not sure how high up he is. And I do agree with the idea that bringing in someone more experienced. I mean, if it was my choice, I do like Upamecano as well. I think he's got some great attributes. He reminds me a lot of Koulibaly in the sense, a younger version. But when I've watched him this season, he has made a few mistakes, and I don't think we can afford to be making those sort of mistakes. So I'd be going after Koulibaly, and it's clear that whatever happens this summer, Koulibaly will likely leave Napoli. And with Gabriel seemingly the replacement, I feel like perhaps they're waiting to see what happens with Koulibaly before they sign it up. So I know that Everton have been linked with him, but I do probably expect him to go to Napoli along with Osimhen. And I think United will be looking around perhaps to someone like Ben White. But again, I'm not convinced, because I think we do need someone more experienced in there who's been there, done it, as you say. And that will push us to the next level, because we've got a lot of good young centre-backs like Tuanzebe and Mengi. But we need someone more experienced in there. And Maguire's decent. I wouldn't say he's world-class, if I'm being honest with you. I think he's a very good second-choice centre-back, as in the one next to a world-class centre-back. And I'm a fan of Lindelof as well, but again, I don't think either of them are Van Dijk level. I think that's quite obvious. So, yeah, I would say that Gabriel is probably unlikely to happen unless we hear it from a more reputable source.
Yeah, well, following up on what you said, Hayder, I think United, in an ideal world, do like the idea of buying a younger centre-back, someone like Gabriel or Ben White, if, they feel like they could trust Maguire to be that experienced centre-back. I think we all thought he would be, and that reliable rock at the back. But obviously, at times, he showed that he struggled himself. So I think it wouldn't really be fair on Maguire to give him the extra pressure next season to expect him to be the centre-back that sort of nurtures through a young one, when I still think he's trying to fit into that United shirt. As for Upamecano, it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast with Rafa Honigstein last week, and he said it's no coincidence that since the restart in the Bundesliga and the Premier League, the sort of rumours about Upamecano leaving have gone a bit quiet because his form's not been great since the restart. But I think, again, we've got to be careful with that because it's, a lot of players have shown since the restart it's took them a bit longer to get back up to full speed. So I wouldn't sort of rule him out on that. But Koulibaly, actually, the link with Gabriel going to Napoli, I never even thought that could even be linked to him leaving. But obviously, yeah, I mean, and obviously Koulibaly is a defender that we've been linked with on numerous occasions. I just feel like the money might put United off in the end for that one. I think, there's been talk of something up to 100 million euros that Napoli might want for Koulibaly, and obviously United's big chunk of transfer budget this season is undoubtedly probably going to go on Jadon Sancho, which we will come on to now. I was going to chat a bit more about Jadon Sancho today, but hopefully on Friday, on the next Just for Another Transfer show, we're going to have a Jadon Sancho special with a deal looking like it's moving closer. So we will cover Jadon Sancho in a bit more depth on Friday. But one thing I do just want to ask you guys, and I'll come to you first, Kojo. There's been conflicting reports in the last couple of days that there's been a bid from United. Now, it's interesting that the talk of a bid from United has come mainly from the German press, I think, and actually the English journalists, the English press over here have denied, United have even made a bid. And even Fabrizio Romano last night put a tweet out saying that no official bid has yet been made for Sancho. But where do you stand on this? Do you think United have dipped the toe in the water here yet and put a bid in or not?
No, I don't think so. I think they've definitely made their interest very clear at the very least. But this is a delicate deal. It's a very expensive deal, so I don't think United would have just thrown a bid out there out of nowhere. And yeah, Fabrizio Romano always does get it right, to be completely honest, when it comes to these deals, especially the big ones. So no, I don't believe any bid has been made yet, but I believe one's coming within the next 2 weeks, 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. All for United put a tweet out, I think yesterday, suggesting that they, Ben and whoever, everyone in charge at All United have got a real feeling that this might be done by the end of next week. Now, I think that might push me, because one thing my experience with United is once they've sort of got a transfer deal done, these things sort of take time. The medical seems to take longer than every other club, and it can be quite frustrating. But I would imagine by the end of next week, there to be real movement on this one way or another. How do you see this transfer developing, James? Because we don't really want it to become a saga over the whole window when we have other areas of the squad that we want to develop. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd completely agree with you. I think with the size of the deal, you can't expect anything less from United than to drag it out as long as they possibly can. That just seems to be the Woodward way. But I think the rumours of the August 10th deadline could be the best thing for us as a club, because it's like a kick up the backside to the board and saying, well, if you really want him, you've got to speed things up. So yeah, I'd expect some movement soon, given how sort of reliable the sources are that are saying there's this deadline being put in place.
Yeah. Hayder, what do you think? Just following on from what James said there about the deadline, how do you see that? Do you think that United will feel threatened by that, or do you think that that's Dortmund sort of starting to get worried that, like, we'll talk about it a bit later on in the show? Like, do you think Dortmund is starting to worry that United may be looking at other targets?
I think the deadline, like James is saying, is a good thing for us, because we've seen with many big transfers they have been dragged out. But in the past, United have had their pants pulled down completely with a lot of transfer fees. You look at the Maguire fee, we could have bought him for 60 million a year before we went and spent 80. So I think we're actually approaching it in the right way. I mean, what I've noticed from my views of looking at the German media and UK media is that a few weeks ago, the German media were very much conservative in their approach. They had a very stringent approach to the deal happening. I think they had more negative thoughts that it was unlikely. Whether they're being briefed by Dortmund is another thing, but interest from the British media has been usually confirmed quite late. That's something that I've noticed when I'm looking. They don't confirm the interest till the last stages of a deal. But what we're seeing at the moment is Simon Stone and James Cooper have stated our interest is very concrete, which I think is massive, because you're seeing this German media, British media thing going on quite a lot. You're seeing it in terms of the Thiago potential deal to Liverpool or maybe United, I don't know. So I think the narrative's changed in Germany, and they're sort of coming around to prospect that he is likely to leave. And it seems the players pushing for it as well. I mean, I don't think Champions League's really a sole criteria for this happening. In the past, we've signed players, who have not been, when we have not been in Champions League, we look to insert performance-based clauses into the contract to enhance the wages. So whilst I think Champions League is an important criteria, I don't think it was, sort of a sticking point for this deal, but I think that helps us to drive the price down. I expect us to get it done before August, the 10th, I suppose. I think it will get done. I'm pretty calm about it because I think the player wants to leave. I think Dortmund are open to that. But again, it does depend on if a player is going to come in for Dortmund. And I don't think Dortmund would stop a player leaving as long as the fee is met. So I think it'll get done before. But United are just going to be very calculated in how they approach that fee, whether it's an 80 million plus add-ons or 90 million plus add-ons, I'm not too sure. But it'll get done, and I think we've got a right player on our hands if it does happen, or when it happens, I should say.
No, fantastic insight there, and a great insight from you, Ada, on just how sometimes this media merry-go-round works and how they sort of almost contest against each other and bounce off each other to try and make stories. But I think I mentioned it in the last show or maybe the show before. I think it's quite telling now that a lot of top British journalists in this country are starting to run with this story, like Simon Stone, like James Cooper. Because one thing I do know is that very reputable journalists won't talk about transfer stories on their Twitter feed unless they feel like they have some real substance, because they've had their fingers burnt too many times. I mean, you've got to be very careful out there when you put these transfer stories out there, because if they don't happen, all of a sudden it's not the buying club's fault. It becomes your fault for making the story and putting it out on Twitter. So I think that's a really interesting point that you make now, that the big journalists are getting this and they're starting to run with it. So there must be some confidence. Now, obviously, we've talked about the fact that United are looking to maybe look at other options. I mean, I did a show last week, and as I was on air, this story broke on Sky Sports that United were interested in maybe Kingsley Coman as a backup option for Sancho, if they weren't able to get Sancho over the line. But interestingly, Bayern Munich didn't want to sell the player, which I think says a lot about his quality, because Bayern Munich don't sell good players at the end of the day. But they would be happy to do a loan. I'm just thinking, if the worst was to happen, I'll come to you, Kojo, and we weren't able to get Sancho this summer for whatever reason, a deal fell through, a number of reasons it could, but for one reason, if it did, do United need to be looking at another loan signing, or is that just do you think that's just a sign of the times, and actually because of the whole coronavirus thing, we might have to see more big clubs doing loan deals, where usually that's something they look to avoid?
No, we need to make a permanent signing. If the money's there to buy Sancho, the money's there to buy someone else. That for me is as simple as it gets. We are in a very unique position during this whole coronavirus situation, where it's been made clear that we're one of the very few clubs that have the money to spend. So if you're able to go and spend over 100 million, it'll obviously be in installments, but if you can spend 100 million on a Jadon Sancho, or afford to, but it doesn't happen, you can afford to go and spend money on someone else. So going for Coman, as much as I like him, I don't think it's worth going to try and get him on a loan deal. We need to try and make a permanent signing. We need to be intent on making a very big statement signing. Someone that also works with the team, of course, but a statement of intent to say, we're here to improve, and we're improving, but we're looking to challenge in the next couple of years. So, no, I wouldn't take a loan. If you've got the money for Sancho, but it doesn't go through, you've got the money to go and get someone else.
Okay, thank you. James, the Coman story that obviously went out on Sky Sports, do you think there's some substance to it, or is it just a part of this game that we're playing that we've talked about a few times on this show of, you know, United trying to scare Dortmund or whatever? And if there is something in the story, is Kingsley Coman a player you like and a player that you think would suit United?
Yeah, I can't see much validity to it. I don't think it's ever really going to happen. Bayern aren't going to want to get rid of him. United won't want a 1-year signing. I think it's just come from how easy it is. You know, Bayern Munich have just signed Leroy Sané, so there's a possibility they might be looking to get rid of him, but I don't think they will. Sorry, what was the other thing you asked as well?
Just Kingsley Coman himself as a player. Do you think he fits the profile to be a United? Would he fit our squad? Obviously, I know he's got the talk is that he's quite attracted to the idea of playing alongside some of his French teammates. I think he's good friends with Anthony Martial and obviously Paul Pogba. But do you think aside from that, would he be, if United were looking at him as the main target, is he a player that you like? Is he a player you know a lot about?
I can't say I've watched too much of him. It goes without saying, he's won a title in every season of his professional career, I'm pretty sure. So he's played for some of the biggest teams in the world. There's no doubt he's a quality player. I think if it's just with that sort of player coming to this sort of club, you don't, apart from Bruno Fernandes, obviously, you don't see people hit the ground running. So I think a 1-year loan deal for him would offer us nothing, because by the time he started going, by the time he's got going in the league and so forth, he's out the door again. So I just don't see much sense in signing him on a loan deal, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think I'm totally with you. That's why I sort of asked the question of sort of method of madness in terms of, we've got this situation where we've got a loan deal for Ighalo now that actually runs out, I think, in January. Now, does that mean that United are going to wait all the way to January to try and get a striker? And for me, loans just kick the can down the road. They kick the problem down the road. I don't know what you think, Hader, on that one. I mean, if United are going to look to do any deals this summer, if they can, they need to be permanent ones, don't they? And as well as Kingsley Coman, they've also been linked with Ismail Assar, who's obviously at Watford and done well at times this season. But again, I don't know what you think, mate, but for me, any other deal apart from Sancho in that right wing area would just feel like it'd be a fail. And I think that player would be under pressure coming in, because I think everyone would understand that he's second or third choice.
Yeah, I think Sancho has to come in. There's no, sort of two ways about it. Last season, we couldn't secure him. I know we were very interested. So anything but Sancho will be a step down and a failure, and the board will have a lot to answer for. When Ollie's managed to get us into the top four when it seemingly seemed impossible to happen, he needs to be backed. And we've seen this several times, even under Jose, where we came second and we didn't have a proper window. So I think you have to look at the source where the Coman sort of links came, and it was Sky Sports, and we all know Sky Sports are about as reliable as a chocolate teapot, so I wouldn't look too much into it. But I think when I look at Kingsley Coman as a player, and I actually had a guest come onto my podcast last week and we discussed this rumor, and let's say Sancho comes in, we get a Jack Grealish, we manage to sign a defender, and there's an option to bring in, let's say, Coman on loan, I wouldn't really be against it, because I'm one of those that thinks, I think everyone thinks this really, but I think that our squad depth is a real problem. Even when you look at our front line, as much as Dan James had a great start, he's young, he's just come out from the Championship. Since the restart, I've been really disappointed in him, and I don't really trust that if Rashford doesn't play, he's our next option to play on the left. I know if Sancho comes in, we've got the opportunity to play him on the left, and we're going to rest Rashford, and we've got options. But I don't think for a club that's trying to challenge for the title, compete on all four fronts, Dan James can be your reserve player. I think alone's really the way forward with him. So Kingsley Coman wouldn't start, I don't think, in our fully fit front three. But to have him coming off the bench, when we're looking at the bench at the moment, we're seeing Mata, Lingard, Pereira. I wouldn't be against it. I would not have a permanent deal for Coman, because his injury record, as we've seen, is very, very poor. But United don't really utilise the loan market well. I know we've signed Ighalo. In the past, we bring in Larson. He was quite a nice little signing. But you look at Bayern Munich, they brought in Coutinho this season, and he had a pretty good loan deal. United don't do that. They don't bring in big players on loan. If it's to accommodate the squad after you sign 2 or 3 players, I have no problem with it at all. I think it'd be quite clever business. And if it doesn't work out while he was here, he's gone. We had him, we tried, but I wouldn't sign him on a permanent deal. And onto Sarr, I think you're right. I really like what I see of him. I think he's been a standout player for Watford this season. If you look at Watford, they've got some interesting players like Deulofeu, Decore, Roberto Pereira, who would actually be quite good in our squad. And we need to be looking towards improving the first team, but also our backup options in midfield, for example. But you're right, putting that pressure on a young player who's very raw would not be fair. So I think that if you have to bring Sancho in, and if you're bringing in someone else after, a loan for Coman, yeah, I don't have a problem with it, but he wouldn't be my first choice. And as you said earlier, Bayern Munich don't sell players when they're on top. We've seen that with Schweinsteiger. We've seen it with other players that they're not a selling club. So Sancho a bust for me, and Coman, until someone other than Sky Sports says it, I'm not going to believe it.
And just remind me again, Hayden, as useful as a chocolate, what was that?
Teapot.
That's the word, chocolate teapot. And actually, for those of you who, I know we have viewers all around the world, so some of you might not be fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, however you want to look at it, to be able to view Sky Sports. They're always about half an hour late on breaking news. You know, if you want reliable transfer news and stories, keep your eye on Twitter. There's loads of fantastic journalists out there for loads, experts in different countries that have news days before Sky Sports do. So, yeah, definitely interesting insight there as well into some of our media outlets. Ada, thank you for that.
No problem.
Just coming to you, Kojo, now, another name, and to be fair, this is a name that United have been linked with over a couple of years now, and that's the American Leon Bailey, who's obviously at Bayer Leverkusen. Now, like I say, it's a story that's never really gone away, and I mean, you probably know a little bit more about him than I do, so I'm going to sort of hand over to you, but with Leon Bailey, am I right by saying that actually he might be an answer to play through the middle for us as well? He's not exclusively a winger, or am I wrong with that? Do you fill us in?
Yeah, I mean, it is an option, but it's not an option I'd take. If you're going to play him, you're just best put him on the right side. Anytime he's played down the middle, he's sort of tried to drift out to the right anyway. But all in all, he's a good player. He's a good dribbler of the ball. He's exciting, taking players on. He's got an eye for a pass, which I think is very important from the right side, because, I mean, we've seen a lot from the left these days. Rashford a lot more deeper, trying to find the pass. I think we need outlets from both sides. Set pieces as well, which is very good. I mean, we've got Bruno for that. Pogba's good at set pieces. Rashford's hit a couple as well, but it's good to have another option on top of that. And a good eye for goal from many distances. He's very confident on the right side, very comfortable. Taking players on defensively as well in terms of doing the work. He will track back a lot more to help out Wan-Bissaka or whoever else will deputise on the day if Wan-Bissaka's not available. And yeah, he's this season's had a bit of a difficult one because DRB has emerged and he's had a very good season, to be fair to him. So that's another player that has done very well for Leverkusen. But Leon Bailey's been exciting for a long time, and he's a player that would excite the United fans. I think he's the kind of player that the team would look for, would fit the style of football that Ole wants to play, and in terms of settling down, speaks English perfectly. Has actually visited Manchester a few times because he's quite close with like Raheem Sterling and Sancho when he was there from that young. So he knows the city as well quite well, which is very important when you're settling. So he would be a good player for us, and if we did lose Sancho, that wouldn't be a second bad option at all. And he'll be much cheaper, probably around £30 million.
Right, yeah, thanks for that, Kojo. I mean, like I say, it is a player that I'm aware of. I actually watched quite a lot of Bundesliga football because obviously they came back before us, and it was just nice to have football on the TV. And I do think he was a player who was sort of a victim of, coming back from the restart. He probably didn't hit the ground running, and like you say, he's had other players playing in his position this season, so it's been difficult. We're coming towards the end of the show, guys. I mean, it's the first time I've worked with you, and it's been an absolute pleasure. But what I want to just ask you is quickly a brief answer from the three of you, sort of your ideal transfer window, realistically, before you start throwing out loads of names and changing the whole squad, versus what you actually think United will do. So, James, I'll come to you first. In an ideal transfer window, what would it look like for United, and in terms of incomings? But actually, what do you think they'll do realistically?
Well, it goes without saying Sancho. I think there's a big debate between Grealish and Van der Beek from Ajax, and I think for the difference in price, I'd go for Van der Beek.
Yeah.
And then for a centre-back, I mentioned it earlier, I'd go Upamecano. But realistically, I can see Sancho happening. I think with the amount of legs that this Grealish story is gaining, I can see that possibly happening. And then I feel like our budget will go on those two. So I feel like a real sort of cheaper centre-back could be the option. So possibly an Ake or a Torres from Villarreal.
Fantastic, yeah. Yet another name thrown into the mix, Pau Torres. Oh, I've seen mentioned a few times in Villarreal. Kojo, I'll come to you. Your window, what you would like to see happen, but actually what you realistically think will happen this summer.
I want us to invest in a centre-back, another centre midfielder, preferably defensive, but I wouldn't mind a Grealish coming in, and a right winger, Sancho, of course. So Sancho, Grealish, wouldn't mind Upamecano, and actually I wouldn't mind another right back. I like Wan-Bissaka. It's not to displace him. I just think extra competition. I don't think Fossey Benson's going to be the one to do that, and Dado doesn't look like he's a future at the club either. So those would be the 4 positions that I would go for. But I haven't got a right back in mind right now, for being honest.
Yeah. We're just. I think our heads are just all in. Oh, we're all on Sancho at the moment. All in on sort of centre back names. Yeah. I mean, we do need greater depth all around the squad. That's what I mean. I mean, you could probably give me a player for each position that you feel like we could improve. But like I say, quickly on to you, Hayder, in terms of what you would like, but actually what you think we'll see this summer.
I'd love a left back. I'm not one of those that's been fully convinced by Luke Shaw. I think he's actually stepped up since the restart, and we've missed him a lot. You can see how integral he is, his overlapping runs, creating that space for Rashford. When Williams has been playing at left back, he's been coming inside too much, and that takes up Rashford space. I'm not a fan of my right-footed left backs, if I'm being honest. And with Diogo Dalot clearly and surprisingly just out of favour, I think he'll leave. We should be just chucking him towards Porto and saying, give us Alex Telles, 16 goals, 11 assists. What a player. I don't want to see us go anywhere near Chilwell, if I'm being honest. Not much better than Shaw. And Sancho, obviously, I think I'd agree with sort of James's takes. I'd love Grealish. I think Van der Beek's a phenomenal player as well. But looking at the pricing, I think Grealish will have to force a move. So if we can get Grealish for 50, perhaps 60 million with add-ons, I'd be happy with that. And then a centre-back, it would probably be sort of a Torres, a Gabriel perhaps, if Napoli don't sign him up. Ake, I'm not convinced on either, but I think a left-back is much more pressing than people think. And I really, fingers crossed, hope that Tuanzebe steps up next season, because I'm a big fan of his. And I think he has all the raw attributes and the sort of, on paper, the abilities to be a great partner for either Lindelof or Maguire.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ada. I mean, that's a really interesting point you make. Dalot swap with Telles. I mean, if we could do some sort of swap deal there, it may involve a bit of money. I think United have had a result there. He does look like a promising player, and it's not quite happened for Dalot, unfortunately, United, for whatever reason. So we're going to finish up there, guys. Thanks for watching again. Don't forget, please give this channel a subscribe and a like. It's got loads of great content now. We've got the Twamen show that was, well, it was yesterday. It was fantastic. He's going to be a great sign into this channel. We've got the breakdown and banter. Kojo's been involved in that heavily since we got the channel going. Him and Usman are doing a great job there, along with Roger Giggs. We're going to have new shows coming at you every week. It's just going to be brilliant, guys. So keep watching, keep subscribing, keep liking, get involved in all our social media content. And I'll see you on Friday for the next show, a Jadon Sancho special. Cheers for watching, guys. Bye.